everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about how to write a book. I had a couple of questions on this subject and I did an Instagram story poll and it seemed like a really popular subject idea for a video, so I hope you're going to enjoy it. If you're new here, I am the author of 5 published books so far and I've got 2 more coming out this year. So today we're going to talk about 10 tips on how to write a book. So these are things that I do, things that I did before I was published, things that I wish I'd done, wish I'd known, and I hope it's going to be really helpful and motivating if you are looking to start writing a book, if you've got that idea, you just don't know where to begin, or it's just a dream that you've always had. So yeah, I really hope you enjoy it and I really hope it's going to be useful as well. The first tip I have is literally give yourself permission to start, because I feel like every time I've been asked that question, how do you write a book? Really, what they're actually asking me is how do I write a book? As in, how does the person asking me write a book? And I think it's because there is a feeling of fear. There's a feeling of fear of failure, fear that it's something that you can't do, that maybe like authors are some kind of magical special being and that you can never be one of them. So I feel like the first tip I have for you guys is give yourself permission to start. And if you need permission from me, a published author, you have it. You have permission to start. Go for it. I think that you can spend a lot of time looking up how do I start, writing tips, how to get published, things like that. But at the end of the day, it's only going to happen if you write a book. So you have to give yourself permission to start. You actually have to start it. You can spend years thinking about it, wishing that you're going to do it, having this dream, but unless you actually sit down and start writing a book, it is never going to happen. So my number 1 tip is give yourself permission to start, and take this video now as your permission. Start doing it, because it could happen for you. It's happened for me, but it will never happen if you don't actually start writing that book. That massive idea that you've got, that big dream you have, you've got to start it. It's the same when people search for, how to start a YouTube channel or how to grow on YouTube, things like that. It's only going to happen if you actually start your channel and start making videos. So that is my number 1 tip. Start writing that book, guys. So my second tip is there is no right way to write. I really believe this. I think I've said it in a previous video before, so if you are already a subscriber, you might have heard me say this before. I think there is a lot of information on the internet. If you Google how to write a book, what do I need to write a book, or you look at published authors, they will all give you writing tips and writing processes, writing routines. Some people will say you have to write every day. Some people say I don't write every day. And I think you can overwhelm yourself a little bit with the information out there and the tips and the advice and things like that. I think just remember there is no right way to write. Every book is written differently in terms of a different process, but also a different voice. If you read a book by Stephen King, it's going to be very different to a book written by Danielle Steele. And it's not just the subject matter, it's how they write it, how they approach it, what their writing routine is, because we're all different. So what works for me might not work for you. And also you wouldn't want to copy me because you want your book to have your own voice. It's the same for a song. A Taylor Swift song sounds completely different to a heavy metal song, for example. Yes, there might be processes and craft that you could follow. There's genre conventions, things like that. But I think you can overwhelm yourself with looking up that kind of thing. And I think you really just need to find your own voice, your own style and your own process. So my next tip goes back to what you're asking when you're asking how to write a book. And that is, don't think about getting published. Obviously, well, I say obviously, no. Some people just enjoy writing, but a lot of people start writing because they want to be published. They want to be a published author. They want to see their book on the shelves. They want to be able to go in the bookshop and buy their book. That is what I wanted. I wanted people to be able to buy my book, to read it, to love it, to class it as one of their favourite books in the same way that I have favourite books. But I would definitely say, before you start writing a book, and when you first start writing a book, try not to think about getting published. Try not to bog yourself down with, I need a covering letter, I need a synopsis, I need to find an agent, I need to do this, this and this. Because I think if you do that, you're never going to write the book. because it's really hard to get published to start with, but there is a lot to think about. And I just think the very first step is to get words on a page to write your story, because otherwise you're never going to get published because you don't have a book. Non-fiction is slightly different because that works often on pitches and things like that. But when it comes to fiction, you have to have a finished book. No one's going to publish it unless it's finished. Or if you're going to self-publish, you can't publish it unless it's finished. So don't think about getting published, just start writing the book. That is my top tip. My next one is that I find a lot of people say, oh, I don't have the time to write a book. And obviously that is completely understandable. Everybody lives busy lives. You might have a full-time job. You might also have a family, one or the other, etc., etc. I started writing what became my debut novel, but I started way before that, which we will come to later, while I had a full-time job. I also had a very long commute. I live in Surrey. My job was in North London, so it was like almost 2 hours there, 2 hours back, Monday to Friday. But I wrote a book. How did I do it? I made time to do it. So obviously it was maybe easier because I didn't have a family, but sometimes in the evenings, but to be honest, it was mostly weekends. I worked on my writing on my book, and I managed to write a book. So I think if it's something you really want to do, you need to carve out the time, like set aside a set time that's going to be your writing time. However you work best, you might want to do an hour in the morning or an hour in the evenings, at the weekends like I did, or even on a lunch break. If you get like a full hour for lunch, you could definitely write during that time. So I think, yes, obviously it is time consuming writing a book, and it is going to be difficult, but I think it will be a lot easier if you like carve out set time to do it each week, and in no time at all, the words will build up and you will have a book. Yay! My next tip is potentially an upsetting tip for you guys. There is no magic formula when it comes to writing a book. You actually have to write the book. You have to get that butt in the chair, to sit down at a laptop. I mean, you could handwrite it first and then type it later, but that is even more time consuming. So I was just doing it on a laptop. But again, it's what I said before, whatever works for you guys. You need to get that behind the chair. You need to write it. You can talk about writing a book for years. You can look up how to write a book for years, but you are never going to actually write that book unless you get yourself in a chair and start writing it. I'm sorry, guys. There is no magic formula. You are just going to have to write that book. Yeah, just do it. Get your butt in the chair and just do it. And my next tip, moving on from that, is I think you should write first, edit later. I think when you have a few books under your belt, if you're published, you might want to change that process. Like I know some people who edit as they go, but for me, if it's your first ever time writing, your first ever book, just write. Get that first draft out, because if you don't have a first draft, you can't make it better. You can't revise it. You can't edit it. You can't polish it. You can't write that synopsis to get an agent or a book deal. You have to just write the book. And I think if you get bogged down with, for example, if you look up writing tips, everyone will talk about, how are you beginning your book? You've got to have a really strong beginning, and you do. But I think if you're too bogged down with that, you're never going to get past the beginning. Does that make sense? So I think you should write first, edit later. Get that first draft out, and then you can think about how you can make it better, if it's publishable or not. But you're never going to know if you really like writing a book, or if it's something that you want to persevere with and to try and get published, unless you write the book. And nobody is going to publish it. An agent's not going to take you on without that full book behind you. So yeah, sorry guys, you just got to write it. So my next tip is to keep yourself motivated. It is a long process, as we talked about, to write a book. Even if you manage to write 1,000 words a day, if it's 100,000 words, then it's still going to take you 100 days to write the book. And as we said before, you are going to have other things that get in the way of that time. You're going to have a job, family, etc. So you're going to need to make sure that you keep yourself motivated and that you don't stop writing the book once you start. So for me, I think it's really important to set yourself some goals. So as we already talked about, carve out some time to write the book, but also try and have some goals in mind. So that could be a weekly word count or a number of chapters that you want to do in a week or a month, or it might be just the actual end date. When do you want to have this book finished by? And just, keep yourself on track, because I am betting there is a lot of unfinished books sitting on laptops or sitting in drawers in people's houses, and that's because they've started but they haven't finished. So you really need to keep on track, keep yourself motivated, and don't end up writing 30,000 word novels. You have got to finish that book. So hopefully we are now at the stage where you have written a book, and now it's like, what do you do next? So my advice would be to get some feedback. It's very difficult to write a whole book and send it off to agents and publishers and get it published without having some sort of like peer feedback process, because it's very hard to have perspective on your own work. And writing really is about practice, about getting better. You're not going to write a great book straight away. Sorry, guys. I mean, unless you're just like a writing genius, but I really don't think that you really can. And so getting feedback is really helpful. So make friends with other aspiring writers online, and you can read each other's work, or you could join writers groups, writing associations, clubs, things like that. There is a whole host of resources and people out there who want feedback on their own work, so are willing to swap books with you. And it's not to say that you need to listen to every opinion on your work, but it definitely helps to have that other perspective. You know, you might not have as well-rounded characters as you thought, or the plot, maybe the pacing's off, or the beginning needs to be stronger, all that kind of thing. Somebody can give you some feedback on and just help you to make it as good as it possibly can be. So definitely try to get some feedback, and make some friends with other aspiring writers, and hopefully you can help each other. So that leads on to my next tip, and that is writing is rewriting. So when people say, how do I write a book? You are not going to write just a whole book from A to B, job done, thank you, you're going to get published. You've got to revise that book, you've got to rewrite it, you've got to edit it, I'm afraid. And it's very rare. I mean, I don't know of an example, but, I'm always willing to be proved wrong. I don't think that there is any writer whose very first book that they've ever written in their whole life has been published. I think every published author has written something before that first book. Maybe it's not a whole book, but they've definitely written stories before, maybe short stories, or they've written another novel that didn't get published, because it's very difficult to write a publishable book straight away. So for me, The Second Love of My Life was my debut, but I probably wrote 5 or 6 books before that, I think, because you're just it's like anything. It's like playing the piano. You've got to learn the craft, you've got to practice, you've got to get better and improve. And so don't get disheartened by that. Don't think you're just going to write one book and that is it, and that is going to be a bestseller, because that is so rare. That's like winning the lottery kind of rare. Most writers, as I say, will have work on their computer that just hasn't been published. And not just when you're starting out either. There's published authors that also then write another book that doesn't get a book deal, because it's not just about how good a book is, it's about how marketable it is, whether a publisher is looking for that kind of thing at the moment, etc. There's so many aspects to it. So writing is rewriting. Make sure you polish that book as much as possible. But my advice, probably, don't kill me, would be to write a book, put it to one side, and then write another one. Because I think that is the best way to get better at it, is to write another book, to polish that one. Just keep practicing, basically. It's kind of a cycle. Write, edit, repeat. And then hopefully you will hit that goal. You will get published in the end. And it's also really helpful to keep writing when you're waiting. Publishing, there's a lot of waiting. So for example, if you've written a book and you're trying to get an agent, you're going to send off 3 chapters and a synopsis to that agent. While you're waiting for them to read and give you feedback, you need to start another book, because that one might not find an agent. And if it does, then you still need to write another book if you want to be a published author and keep publishing books. Do you see what I mean? So writing is never wasted. Just keep writing, just keep rewriting, keep practicing, keep improving, and you will get there for sure. And that leads nicely, smoothly into my final tip, my number 10 tip, and that is don't give up. As you probably gathered from what I've said, it is very difficult to write a book, to finish a book, to edit a book, to polish a book, to get a book in a good enough position that you will get an agent. And then there's the other step of then getting a book deal. Or if you don't want to get an agent and you're just going for a digital publisher, to get that book deal. So it's really important to not give up. If your goal is to write a book that will be published one day, then you really need to persevere and not give up, because as we discussed, it's very rare for that first book to get published. And even when you are published, sometimes sales aren't good, or your editor leaves, or there's problems, so you're not always guaranteed a second book deal. So I think this whole career, this whole industry, if you want to be an author, you need to realize that you are going to get rejected. We have all been rejected. I've been rejected. I've been rejected not only before my debut was published, but since then. And I think I probably always will be. So I think it's very important that if that is your goal, to be an author, please don't give up. We've all been rejected. Google how many times authors have been rejected, because I think all authors talk about it, because I think there is a sort of perception that you're just like an overnight success sometimes, and you are most definitely not when it comes to books, because as we said, it takes time. It takes time to write a book. It takes time to find an agent. It takes time to find a book deal. Then when you get a book deal, sometimes it's a year before they actually bring the book out. So it is a very slow moving industry. I mean, generally, obviously, now there's digital publishers, it can move a bit quicker. But in general, it's slow. There will be waiting. You will be waiting on feedback a lot of the time. So keep writing. Don't give up. Don't get disheartened by rejections. Watch my Don't Give Up on Your Daydream video to help. And I think you can do it, because if you have the dream to be an author, then I think you can do it. So there we go. I hope that was helpful. I hope it hasn't put any of you off. In fact, I hope it's really inspired and motivated you, if you've got that book idea, to get writing. And unfortunately, as we discussed, there is no magic formula. You are literally going to have to put yourself in a chair, get words down, get writing. It's going to be a long process. There's going to be ups and downs. You're going to get rejected. But if it is your dream, persevere, be determined, get better, improve. You can definitely do it. I would love to know in the comments, are you writing a book at the moment? Is it your dream to write a book? Has this helped? What tips would you give other writers? Let's share all our feedback and advice in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I will also link, as I said, other videos that I've talked about on this subject. So Don't Give Up on Your Daydream video, and also insight into being a full-time author, anything that I think might help you guys if you are an aspiring writer. And yeah, as ever, if you enjoyed, I would love you to subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments if you have any further questions, any other video topics around this area that you would love me to make, and I will definitely do that. So yeah, I really hoped you enjoyed it and found it useful. Take care, look after yourselves, and I'll see you next time for a new video. Thanks for watching so much, guys. Bye.